So this is how the election stands so far. We're gonna go into the so-claimed voter fraud. We're gonna take it back to about an 8-month ago Trump's statement. See if he says anything related to anything that's important right now.
Voters in 5 states, Utah, Colorado, Hawaii, Washington, and Oregon, all vote by mail. Can you or the White House staff or your campaign provide any evidence to back up your claim that mail-in voting is rife with fraud, like the example you gave of people working in rooms filling out false ballots?
Well, what happened
since the beginning of this administration?
Very fair.
And where's the evidence of it?
I think there's a lot of evidence, but we'll provide you with some, okay? And there's evidence that's being compiled just like it's being compiled in the state of California, where they settled with Judicial Watch saying that 1 million people should not have been voting. And you saw that? Wait, excuse me. Well, I'm just telling you. I'm telling you, in California, in the great state of California, they settled, and we could have gone a lot further. Judicial Watch settled where they agreed that 1 million people should not have voted, where they were 115 years old and lots of things, and people were voting in their place. What I see, and every one of those states that you mentioned is a state that happens to be won by the Democrats. And if you have a position like me, where it's registered, you're here, and we're voting someplace where I'm not. I haven't left the White House in, I guess, months, other than ask Chip to wave it goodbye to New York, which, by the way, is now going, as you know, being used for the purpose that we're talking. If you're somebody that needs it, I'm all for it. But they have to be very careful, because the things with bundling and all of the things that are happening with votes by mail, where thousands of votes are gathered, and I'm not going to say which party does it, but thousands of votes are gathered, and they come in and they're dumped in a location.
And this all comes back to mailing ballots. Now it allegedly goes to a drop box or voting center. But how long does it take for that to be mailed? Here we go, mailing ballots deadline. So for them to be counted, it's usually 7 to 11 days. So the votes are counted 11 days or 7 days before election day. Now, the votes are counted right now, or being in Arizona right now, but the votes were counted way before. So they're being counted before the actual election. Now let me get an image of one of these. I just want you guys to know that they don't ask for your ID anywhere. Turns out you just register. Let's get into it. Trump claims that mailing ballots are considered fraud because they do not ask you for your ID anywhere. And as corrected, as I stand correctly, Trump is right because they don't ask you for your ID. They barely ask you where you work. Anyone could mail in a ballot before. Someone could steal your name and then write a mailing ballot and they would get away with it. Now, Wisconsin is a big part of voting fraud because more people was considered voting than actually did vote. Okay, so now Republicans search for Wisconsin. Now, as it stands, Wisconsin has 2 million votes, around 2.5 million votes. But how many people actually did vote in Wisconsin? Now, Wisconsin themselves have said that they have not counted more registered ballots for voters. Now, this is recently what Wisconsin had to say, that they has 3 million registered voters as of right now. This is claimed by Wisconsin that they had 3 million registered voters. So 3 million ballots were counted. Now 3 million ballots were counted. And how many? And we said, I think it was 11 days for voting, but how many early votes people voted? So, right here's a number. Overall, 245 million Americans voted before the election. And Wisconsin had 3 million. And let's check the bigger countries. Now, Wisconsin has, keep this in mind, they have 3 million votes, but they only counted 2 million as of right now. But now, Pennsylvania, they are not so far behind the largest state as of right now, Pennsylvania. Now, Trump's allegations of voting Trump haven't stood up so well. I'm going to take you into some videos of how well Trump is doing on the voting fraud situation. And we're going to do the explained video.
Concern over catching COVID-19 has changed life in the U.S. It's also changing the way Americans vote. Record numbers have requested absentee ballots, and President Donald Trump is sounding alarm bells. Ahead of Election Day on November 3rd, others are
happening on Twitter and in our comments section, but instead we're going to turn to the courts and see what arguments the Trump team are making there.
Now we can get into some arguments.
Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for all the latest updates from TLDR News. Thanks for your support. So far, the Trump campaign has launched a whole bunch of legal challenges to the election results in a number of states. Now, these states might look familiar. You might notice have been filed since election. As you might have heard, courts ruling they were unable to observe the count. But when you dig into the details, it isn't quite as interesting. Originally, vote counters were allowed to watch from a 20-foot distance due to COVID regulations. The new ruling does allow both Republican and Democrat poll watchers within 6 feet, but now requires them to wear PPE to protect poll workers. Trump and some of his surrogates have tried to show any sort of evidence of this. The majority of cases they brought have already been.
In our world today, we begin to believe that we live in one state of mind. In the
Being thrown out, which isn't a good sign. In fact, their cases seem to be falling apart in front of them. With the major whistleblower central to many Republicans' arguments, that's the postal worker who told Project Veritas that the postmaster told him to backdate ballots. Yeah, while he admitted to fabricating allegations and signed an affidavit, add in the counts they tried. He's hoping that the fraud hotline his campaign set up will produce some results, but as even Republican lawyers have been saying,
Badly designed ballots cause hundreds of thousands of votes to go uncounted every year. And with election security concerns and the push to expand mail-in voting, it is more important than ever that ballots are easy to use. So what's the problem? Unless an election is decided by a slim margin, voters usually don't know there was even a design flaw. They hide in plain sight and include issues like candidates split into different pages or columns, or multiple contests placed on the same electronic screen.
Ballot design is one of the most overlooked but important aspects of voting and, in some ways, voter suppression.
That's Mark Elias, a lawyer and Democratic strategist. He's been monitoring how ballot design affects the outcome of elections for years.
We all remember the butterfly ballot in 2000, which was an incredibly poorly designed ballot that may very well have cost Al Gore the presidency. But it's not just the butterfly ballot.
In 2018, in Florida's Broward County, about 3.7% of voters neglected to choose a U.S. senator. 3.7% may seem like a small number, but it means more than 30,000 people did not vote for senator, and Republican Rick Scott beat Democrat Bill Nelson by just about 10,000 votes. What happened? The Senate race was listed at the bottom of the first column of the ballot, blending in with the instructions.
What we saw was a huge drop-off in the number of voters who voted in that Senate race.
Most ballot design errors are a result of overworked local officials who don't have the time